A feel-good coming-of-age story, learning about girls, learning about baseball, learning how to make friends. This is James Earl Jones, Dennis Leary, Karen Allen, Marley Shelton, 1993, The Sandlot. It is hard to believe that the film The Sandlot is almost 30 years old. I did not see it until today. So, full disclosure, it was included in Tubi with commercials. I happened to see it. I had never seen it, so I put it in my list. Today I got to it, and I think because I watched it so late in life, that affects how I perceive it. I mean, obviously, this is a big classic. I finally understand the meme, "You're killing me, Smalls." People have been talking about this film for years. Growing up, being a sci-fi nerd and being into all that stuff in my 20s and the 90s, it's just not a movie I saw. I feel like it is a generational sort of gap. There are certain films in every era that are meant to be nostalgia for the parents and things they can take their children to. When Grease came out, it was very much a big deal that it referenced a lot of things of my parents' generation when they were young. American Graffiti, Happy Days, these things that a lot of us my age grew up with. They were nostalgia of our parents' generation. We watched them with our parents. Now it has that connection for us as being part of our childhood. A lot of people saw the movie A Christmas Story with their parents who remembered the Red Ryder gun, and we still kind of had the Red Ryder when we were little. But again, I did not see that as a child. I still have not seen it. I've tried to sit down and watch it, and it's so boring a few minutes in, because now watching it as close to my age, I started trying to watch it a few years ago, it just doesn't capture the mood. And I think The Sandlot ends up being one of those. It's very much emotionally evocative. It's got a lot of things. It has all the things you need to fill that role, except I was 20 years old when it came out, so it wasn't really a film that was about my childhood or the film itself part of my childhood. My parents were in then the other generation gap that it wasn't something they were going to take me to when I was 20, and it was so it kind of didn't fit. It's that genre that I was the wrong age for that to be the film of that genre for my era, or one of them. I think just a couple years younger, still in high school, it might have been something that we rented and watched as a family if we didn't go to. And also, it is a type of coming of age story, a growing up story for boys of that era that really didn't fit my life story, I guess you'd say. Certainly, I lived through baseball. There was a time when the kids down the farm, down the street, we played a lot of baseball. It's a long story, but we played a lot of baseball around the yard. I was in T-ball and then Little League, but I didn't by the time I was well into junior high, into middle school, I was finally getting out of that. It was sort of my mom's idea to always want me to socialize, Boy Scouts and sports, and I was always a nerd, and I didn't want that. I wanted to read comic books and watch sci-fi and do this nerd stuff. So on the one hand, I'm watching The Sandlot, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of remember that. But a lot of that, playing baseball with the kids down the street, it was relatively either a minor part of my life at the time, or it was painful for me because I never really fit in and it was never my thing. And so you impose all this on the film as you're watching it because it's a nostalgia-driven film. The Sandlot is going to remind you of that era of your life that you did things like this. You told these urban legends and you ran from the dog and you recovered the baseball you lost. And a lot of kids were going through the split family for the first time. He's adjusting to having a stepdad. I never lived through that. So they're all things where I can empathize with what they're going through on a basic human level. But because the film is clearly aimed at a time period specific nostalgia bait sort of emphasis that is not something I lived through, it really doesn't. It was perfectly fun and enjoyable to watch. It was kind of cool. It had engaging parts in it, but it will not ever have the effect for me that it did for people for whom it was the right era, the right timing. They saw it as a family thing. It represented their childhood, and lived in the city and tried to find lots to play baseball in and chase baseballs around the neighborhood. All of that stuff that was not remotely anything that triggers any memory or nostalgia for me. But it is obviously very well put together. You can't beat James Earl Jones. Karen Allen is one of those people that I don't know what happened to her, that she was not in a lot of stuff, being in Indiana Jones and being in Starman and things like that. I didn't even realize that it was young Dennis Leary until looking at the credits, because he'd be like, wow, that was kind of amazing. Thinking that this is not too many years before he would be Edgar Friendly in Demolition Man, and yet I had no idea it was him. But James Earl Jones always brings that touch of class and talent to everything that he does, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this film. The Sandlot is a really well-made, put together, really great film. It just wasn't my shtick. But if it's your era, if you lived lived through that sort of thing in the city, playing baseball, meeting new friends, that certainly is why it is so classic for those that do connect with it on a level deeper than I'm able to connect with it. But it's out there. It is available with commercials on Tubi, and there wasn't too many commercials on Tubi. Check it out if you haven't seen it, although I think I'm probably the last person alive that had not seen it from what I hear. But if you have not seen it, check it out and let me know what you think.